Hi everyone, good afternoon. I'm Caroline, Head of Marketing. If you've not met me before or not heard of me before, thanks for joining us today on our first webinar to do with the modern workplace. Just to let you know that this session is being recorded. It won't be any longer than 60 minutes, that everybody is automatically muted on entry, but if you've got any questions, please put them in the chat box. You should be able to open that up. There should be a menu at the top of your screen. It's got a little speech bubble and it's called chat. If you click on there, it'll open a pop-up that you'll have be able to put some questions in there for later on. We also have made this webinar interactive, so there will be a couple of polls. If you're on Teams desktop, those polls will open up in the middle of your screen, which you can answer. If you're on the web browser version of Teams, those polls could pop up in chat, so please do check there as well. Brilliant. I'm now going to hand over to Matt, our Managing Director, and he'll take over the conversation.
Hi everyone, great to see you here. Agenda-wise, as Karen said, we're going to keep this into 60 minutes. A little bit about who we are. I think many of you know us, but a little bit more about what we've been doing over the last couple of years. Our understanding and definition of a modern workplace solution. A look at the core technologies that make up a modern workplace. A bit of a roundup on the things that we've covered, and then a questions and answers section at the end. Okay, so a little bit about us. So many of you probably know this, but we started in 2009. We're based in the city centre in Exeter. There's now about 33 of us, and what you may not know really is that over the last 4 or 5 years, we've really been focusing on what we class as the Microsoft Modern Workplace, which is embracing a lot of the new technologies that Microsoft have built into Microsoft 365. And our role has become much more about helping organizations understand what those capabilities are and work with them to revolutionize the way that they use technology. So what is a modern workplace solution? So every organization has a slightly different take. If you kind of Google modern workplace, there'll be lots and lots of things that come up, but effectively, our take on the modern workplace is effectively a solution that is that enables organizations to work from multiple locations, predominantly using and focusing on the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. And as we go through this, we'll be talking about, in a very high level format, the core technologies that make that up. But at the core of the modern workplace is effectively using technology in a way that enables you to work from anywhere, from any location, on virtually any device, and allows you to easily scale up or easily scale down. So before we talk about the modern workplace, we should probably talk about what a traditional workplace looks like, and this is familiar to most of us, I guess. So certainly when I started out in work, in order to do your job, you went to work. Those hours are normally fairly fixed. You had your own desk, you had your own PC, you had your own desk phone, and in order to be able to do most of what you needed to do, you needed to be sat at that desk. If you were field-based or you had some flexibility, generally speaking, your experience was very limited. It was harder to get access to emails, harder to get access to data, much harder to kind of answer calls that would come into the office. Again, you'd predominantly be using devices that were owned by the company, and those devices primarily would have a lot of security added to them from being in a building that was physically secured by the business. And email was predominantly the main mode of communication. When we look at the modern workplace, the modern workplace is kind of the exact opposite to traditional, really. The modern workplace is designed to allow people to work from any location, from virtually any device, so in so doing, you allow that flexibility. So we know perhaps a few years ago when we had really bad snow, and lots of offices were closed for a week, and then of course we had COVID. Having that flexibility is absolutely critical. So as we went into COVID, and we still see it now, we see more and more organisations having people starting earlier, they're working later. They need that flexibility to be able to work exactly the same as if they're sat at their desk, but they need to be able to do that from home. They need the flexibility to be able to work from a car, from a cafe, and also they need to be able to work from multiple devices. So with a modern workplace, it's not quite as seamless as working from a laptop, but you are getting to a point now where you can virtually do everything from a decent mobile phone. And with a modern workplace, really what you're doing is you're pulling as many of the things that you need to do, those business applications, those interactions. What you're trying to do is pull them into one single product set. And from an IT champion perspective, and from a business perspective, really our focus is on helping people get as much as they possibly can from the Microsoft 365 ecosystem, and getting the absolute most out of using those licenses that many people are already paying for. So below's a really good, some really good stats from a recent Microsoft survey, and it probably won't surprise you, but it's quite good to see. Organizations are looking to increase operational efficiency, and 33% of people say that's a priority. 32% are looking to technology to improve sales and marketing. 31% are looking to use technology to improve customer retention. And we know that whilst many organizations view technology as important, 16% of organizations view it as absolutely essential to their business. So when we talk about a modern workplace, we look at what's involved in that journey, and that journey is always slightly different for everybody. So when we're looking at what a modern workplace solution is, we break that down internally into 4 core technologies. And this overview really is to give you an idea of what we identify those core technologies are and give you a very high level overview. Follow-up webinars will be getting into the detail of these technologies, and there will be a Q&A section at the end where we can answer any questions. So starting with data and collaboration. So most of our modern workplace journeys, actually, when we talk to people, it's about data. It's about how can I have my data in one place? How can I have it so that the people that we work with, both our colleagues and the people that we partner with, so suppliers or people that we're partnering with, stakeholders, how can we have that data in a place where those people can get access to it, where they can where we know it's secure and it's safe, and they don't need to come into the office to pick up that data. And the modern workplace solution really is about bringing that data in. And we know that by bringing that data into one ecosystem and adding tools to it that are part of the Microsoft 365 stack, we know that improves efficiency. So device management is really important. So when we look at the traditional workplace, devices, and really by that we mean computers and laptops, they were really managed by both, generally speaking, a physical server. So how you logged into those devices, what security policies and permissions people had, were controlled by that server. And then the devices were physically secured because it was quite difficult to pick up a PC and take it home. Although we did have a few people do that on lockdown. So with the modern workplace, we see that actually device management is really key to that, because if we're going to remove a server that isn't needed, and we're going to give people the ability to work from anywhere, from any device, from any location, we absolutely now have to focus on securing that device. We need to make sure that we can control and manage that device if something happens. One of the biggest drivers, actually, to the modern workplace is cybersecurity. So I would say in the last couple of years, we've seen more and more organizations coming to us where they need to meet certain requirements, such as Cyber Essentials or ISO, or where they're looking to renew their insurance. So cybersecurity actually is driving people towards a modern workplace, because when you can fill out a questionnaire that says our data sits in the Microsoft ecosystem and this is what we have in place, it becomes a very easy questionnaire to answer. It's harder in a more traditional environment. So process automation is a really important part of the modern workplace, because whilst we can streamline how data is stored and how it's shared, and there was some fantastic tools for collaboration within Microsoft, and we can control the devices and ensure it's safe. Process automation, which is part of the Power BI platform, is a really important part of this, and we'll quickly show you some of the things that we've used process automation for, both internally and with some of our clients over the last couple of years. So data and collaboration, the big one. So again, this is really about getting data into one ecosystem, and as part of that process, it's revisiting how that data is stored and accessed and shared. So have the data available when and where it's needed. With a secure, integrated solution, your people can access and work from anywhere, anytime, with confidence. So again, when we're looking at if we take this from Microsoft 365 ecosystem, you are talking about things like OneDrive, which is personal storage, Teams, which is collaboration, and then you've got SharePoint, which is company storage. Part of this is around looking at those products and helping you as an organization, or the organization that we're helping, identify, not really looking at what you're doing right now, but actually looking at how you need to work, how those tools can be used and customized to actually make the technology work for you. And that's really the backbone of the modern workplace. Historically, traditional technologies would be, if we're talking about a server, it would be replacing a server with a newer version of the old server. From a user's perspective, very little changed. With the modern workplace, it's the other way around. We're talking to you about how would you like to work? How do you need to work? What features would you like to be able to do? And that's really the core of the modern workplace. But data and collaboration is essential. And again, we know huge benefits, efficiency and productivity, but also actually on top of that, we know that we've got security built into that, and there's a huge value benefit from having data, from eking the most out of those Microsoft 365 licenses. Foster collaboration, and yeah, we know that's a huge benefit. So keeping projects on track, aid team building, and grow a culture of cooperation. So again, we were talking in a traditional workplace around things like email being the primary way of communicating. We know that if we use the modern workplace to its fullest, we're really talking about being able to open documents, collaborate on documents, have multiple people accessing the same document from multiple locations. It makes it easy to share and collaborate on documents. You can, with the right security processes in place, you can share those documents externally. From a security perspective, I think most people have probably experienced the scare of attaching a file or an Excel spreadsheet and potentially sending it to the wrong people. These are all things that the modern workplace helps to reduce. You're not attaching a file and sharing it where you've lost ownership of that file. You're potentially increasing duplicates of that file. The modern workplace is about really having one center of truth, one file that multiple people can work on, multiple people can collaborate on, and you share access to it, and you can then easily review who has access to it and amend that. Having the right tools and set up to match your business processes, structure and focus will improve collaboration and productivity. So again, we kind of touched on that before, but the modern workplace is very much about looking at how you want to work, looking at how you need to work, and building that environment around that. We would never simply look at an existing file structure that you have on a server or something like that and dropping that into the modern workplace and saying, there you go, you're on the modern workplace. There's much more to it than that. Microsoft applications are designed to work with each other and have embedded them into the platforms such as Teams, and they work over desktop, mobile, and web. Again, I think it's one platform. You log into one platform, one username, one password, one set of security, and when you're switching between email and Teams and SharePoint and OneDrive, it's a very slick process. We get an awful lot of challenges really where we're talking to people who are perhaps on other platforms such as Google, or they're using multiple platforms. It can be very difficult to manage access to those platforms. It can be very difficult to manage training on those different platforms. It can be quite difficult to manage how you implement processes for telling people how they should use those platforms. So having one platform with one set of management and all the tools that you need in one place is a very slick way of doing it.
So we've got our first poll here. I'm just launching it. If you are on your desktop version of Teams, it should pop up in the middle of your screen. If you're on a web version of the Teams, it should, or perhaps might pop up in the chat box. You can open that via the menu at the top of your screen. I'll give you all we'll give about 10 seconds, 20 seconds to answer that question. And then we'll have a quick look at the results once it's closed. I'm hoping everybody's had a chance to answer that. Let's just close the poll.
Great. So it's really interesting to see the responses there. So if I just run through those, so keeping track of changes, that's a really big one. Actually, we touched on it before, but one of the challenges with a traditional environment is a user either has access to a file or they don't. It's very difficult to see to keep track on changes that have been made. It's very difficult to keep track on version history, and it's actually very difficult to keep ownership of that document. So you can't easily stop people from attaching it to an email and sharing it with somebody else, and then somebody else then storing it somewhere else. So within the modern workplace, there's a whole load of automation you can include, one of which is the ability to kind of lock down changes on a particular document and have an approval process. So people can make multiple changes, but actually it goes to an appointed person who has to approve that document for publication before it gets used. Knowing where the latest version is, again, the traditional environment is, here's a folder structure, and you kind of have to know where things are to find it. The search results aren't always fantastic. So whenever we're talking about the modern workplace, we would never simply take a folder structure and replicate it. We're talking about building environments that are perhaps teams or department focused, and we're building environments, online environments really, that help people find the resources and data that they need. The search functionality is really good, and again, when you get into the later versions or some of the more advanced features, you can add metadata to documents, so you can start to tag documents. So when you want to sort documents by company name or a document type, you can start to really easily find documents that you don't even know the name to. So that's an inbuilt thing. Keeping track of who has access to the file. Again, one central management makes it very easy to do that. Knowing the right people have the right access to data. Again, one of the really cool features with the modern workplace is that there's a functionality within that, so that if a user doesn't have access to a particular file, they can request access to it, and that comes via the admin. So these are all things that are addressed really in a modern workplace within Microsoft. Device management. So so we talked about in a traditional environment, we've got a physical building, we've got probably a server or servers, and traditionally device management would be controlled either by the server, controlling who can log into those devices, controlling who can access what files and folders, what applications to install on their machine, and things like that. And then, of course, those devices are physically secured by the building. When we start to talk about the modern workplace, we're kind of reducing those barriers. We're saying, look, actually, subject to the policies that we design and build for you, you can access that company data in any way that the company decides that it's appropriate for you to access it. So we saw during lockdown that more and more people were switching over to laptops, which is fantastic. But we need to make sure those laptops are secure and that we can manage them, and mobile phones and tablets. We need to make sure those devices are secure, that they have all the built-in security that the Microsoft ecosystem provides, and in the event of something bad happening, that we can secure them for you. So, strong protection policies and access controls to systems and data. So device management will save time, improve efficiency, increase production security, and ease mobile management. So there are kind of a few bits to this. So the first bit is if we're going to remove a server, which really is one of the huge drivers to the modern workplace, it reduces that kind of every 5 year or so cost. It improves efficiency. If we're going to do that, then we need to look at how we then manage devices. So having those devices centrally managed from the ecosystem is fantastic. One of the things we come on to is security. So we can see from the stats here, a laptop stolen every 53 seconds. 70 million smartphones are lost every year. Data breaches compromise of 80% of the cost of a laptop. 52% of devices are stolen from the workplace. One other thing to add to this actually is more and more organizations are starting to use mobile phones and tablets. And one of the really big parts of this is actually, one, securing that data, but two, securing that device. So I can't remember the amount of times that we've had a phone call from a company where they've spent over £1,000 on an iPhone for a colleague. That colleague's left, they've handed it back to their manager. A couple of weeks later, the manager's come to get it set up for somebody else, and it's locked to that old employee's iTunes account. Anybody that's done this process will know that unless you bought the device from Apple and you can prove it's yours, it's virtually impossible to get that device decoupled. So you can effectively be having a £1,000 iPhone that's worthless. So device management is really important. Part of that, as is actually the automation that we'll come on to on the next slide. So benefits, uptime and risk reduction. So use of personal devices, BYOD as it's known, has been a thing for quite a long time. So I can remember in a previous role of mine 15 years ago adding my work email account to my personal phone. I'm sure that's something that happens a lot more than we all probably think. So BYOD is on the up. The more things that we put in the Microsoft ecosystem, or either any cloud-based ecosystem, the more things that we make available online or via an app, the more risk that we have of those things sitting on a device that you can't manage. You don't know what security is on those devices. You don't know where they're being used or where they've been left. You wouldn't even know if it's been stolen. Official statistics of the cybersecurity breach survey in 2022 found that nearly half of businesses, 45%, and 2/3 of charities, 64%, say that their staff in their organisation regularly use their own devices for work-related activities. And we can see this on the right-hand side. So only allowing access via company, 56%. That's probably in line with what we would expect. Again, charities, they are, from the poll, that they're much more relaxed about that. Policy to apply software security. Again, when you're looking at mobile device management, particularly around BYOD, in order to keep those devices secure, you do need to be talking about things like security patching and what additional security on the final stat there, what additional security those devices have, such as multi-factor authentication. So BYOD is a really big thing. Giving people access then means that we need to have some kind of device management in place that matches the security posture of your organization.
Well, second poll of the webinar is all about device management and looking at those stats on the right hand side. Just going to launch it for you. Just a quick reminder that if you're on the desktop version, there should be a pop-up window, and if you're on the web version, it should be in chat. How are you aware of what you have currently within your organisation. We'll give everybody about 20 seconds to answer that, and then we'll view the results. Okay, I'm hoping everybody's had a chance to answer. I'm just going to close the poll.
Great. So yeah, fantastic. As we'd hope, anybody that works with us regularly will know how much we've been banging on about two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication, how important that is, and that's a really important part of that. So we can see that overwhelmingly here, 73% of people have added that policy. 18%, again, this is quite interesting. So it kind of plays into that whole piece where even if it's just email, having things like email on a device that you don't own, that you don't manage, whilst we or your IT team can reset a password, and actually Microsoft do allow some basic device resetting. It can actually be very difficult to really secure company data on a device that isn't in some way, shape, or form managed. That's a really interesting poll. Thank you. Security and compliance. So, so for anybody that's really been going through all of those things like Cyber Essentials and needed to fill out a questionnaire for cyber insurance, security and compliance is becoming much more of a driver towards a more secure and more modern workplace. So yeah, we'll go into some detail on that in a second. So having security and compliance built in absolutely protects your organization's data. Meet insurance demands while reducing exposure to security risks, defend against advanced cyber threats, and control access to sensitive information and secure devices. We know that the modern workplace solution built around Microsoft has in it a number of factors which are effectively default policies, default security measures that are designed to meet things like Cyber Essentials and ISO. And yeah, if I briefly touch on cyber insurance, for example, that there was a time a few years ago where the questions around cyber insurance was, what's your turnover, what industry are you in, and how many people have you got? We're now seeing some really quite tricky requirements. So not only is the list of questions there's questions for a start, whereas before there weren't any, and those questions are actually really difficult. And if you're using traditional infrastructure with traditional applications that sit on the server, and you've got people using your own devices or devices that aren't managed, it can actually be really difficult to tick those boxes. And so by moving or at least being on a journey towards a modern workplace, which encompasses everything from that ecosystem, including data and security, device management, it helps on that journey. So most important factors when selecting a new technology solution. So percentage of SMBs. So probably won't be much of a surprise that 41% of people, when they're looking at new technology, would count reliability as the most important factor. And yeah, that's fantastic. What was a surprise for me actually was the security element. So when organizations are looking at new technology, they're rightly challenging what security capabilities they've got. And if you can kind of imagine, I don't know what we're up to now, but on a pretty standard Microsoft license, I think you've got about 18 different applications built into it for data, collaboration, communication, all those kinds of things, forms. So if you are trying to look at the security and reliability and all these other factors into all of those individual products that you may be buying separately and having different people using it, just the time to review the security and reliability and efficiency of all those individual products is huge. So by choosing one ecosystem and by doing your very best to use that ecosystem for as much of the business related tasks that you can, means that that security question comes up once. And so, yeah, security is a really big factor.
This is our final poll of this lovely webinar. I'll just launch it now for you all. And again, it's around that piece of the cyber essentials and cyber insurance that Matt mentioned. Right, I hope everybody's had a chance to answer if they want to. I'm just going to close the poll now.
Great. Yeah, I mean, certainly from our exposure when we're helping people, so historically we wouldn't have got too involved in cyber insurance. Historically, it would be a case of we recommend you have it, but generally speaking, organizations didn't really need our help. Now we're getting more and more people who have it or want it, needing to come to us and saying, look, can you help us fill out this questionnaire? And do we do this and don't we do this? Again, Cyber Essentials, we are seeing more and more people looking to get Cyber Essentials. For those of you who don't know, Cyber Essentials is a government sort of backed and supported accreditation, really, which I think it was originally designed to set a degree of standards for small businesses, so that when government and sort of government organisations wanted to give more work to small businesses, that was a way of saying, right, if you've got this level of cyber essentials, we know that you've hit a particular security requirement, and therefore we can trust you to give us to use you and to give our data. So yeah, it's great to see the poll stats here reflecting that. Automate processes. So yeah, so again, we've put our data into one place. We've made sure the right people have access to it. We're letting people work from where they need to and in a way that the company's decided. We know that when they're doing those things, wherever they are, their devices are safe and are secured, and they get lost or stolen or they need to be replaced really quickly. We know that the device management side of things is in place. Those things have security and compliance built in them. Now, what else can we do? And this is really where automated processes come in. So, innovate quickly for fast results. Improve business agility with Power Apps. So, Power Apps forms part of the Power Platform. We're really focusing here on Power Apps because this is probably the one of the three that we have used most in the last few years. You also have Power Automate, which is pretty clever set of technologies that can automate a number of manual tasks. And then you have Power BI, which is a tool effectively for bringing data from multiple locations, so Sage or a spreadsheet or a SQL database or any number of other things, and displaying it in one pane of glass and then manipulating that data and sharing it with your colleagues. But today we're just going to focus on Power Apps because I think that's probably the most interesting one. So allow your people to focus on more strategic tasks. We've helped organizations launch apps that have reduced the admin time of the high volume office tasks such as resource booking and project management. So we have an internal app. We have a range of internal apps. We've created something called the Powerhouse, and we use that for everything from our guys use that to book hot desks, so they can go in and we have a map of the office and where the desks are, and they can go in and they can see which desks are available. They can book them. They can view their bookings. Anybody else can see where those desks are booked. We've done that for other organizations needing a similar thing. And of course, COVID was a really big driver for that. We've now got more people than we have desks. So that's saving us a huge amount of time. Without something like Power Apps, I can't even imagine the amount of admin that would be required to kind of manage that process. And we just know it works. And we spent some time setting it up and it just works. But again, the Powerhouse, we use that for everything from booking desks, a place that generates passwords. We've got it as a way of booking parking. It tells us certain information about certain key parts. So the Power Platform is absolutely essential to actually getting that final 20 or 25% of value out of the Microsoft ecosystem. It's pretty easy to do. So really that fourth core of the modern workplace is right. Everything's great from a modern workplace perspective. Now let's look at all those things that you're still doing manually that we haven't been able to knock over in the other three stages, and let's see how we can use Power Apps and Automate and BI to help with that. Again, Power Apps is really about continual improvement. So benefits companies may experience when they invest in Power Apps. So increased employee satisfaction in the tools that they use to work, they use at work. So it probably won't surprise you that if you have a really clunky process for booking a desk, and sometimes they get in and they find that a colleague sat there and they've both managed to book the same thing, that's not going to be a nice experience. So if you spend time understanding what you as an organization need, and then building something specifically around that, it's pretty easy to imagine how your team would find that a really nice experience. It can help eliminate shadow IT and rein in some of those things. So what we mean by shadow IT is, if you go back to the traditional workplace, it was quite difficult for an employee to adopt a new piece of software because most organizations remove the employee's ability to have admin access to the machines. So they can't just install a piece of software that you as a company don't want them to use. Shadow IT really encompasses all those cloud-based things. So let's say you've got a sales person that's out and about and they really need a CRM system and you've not given them one, or the one that you've given them they don't like very much. They go out and they've found a free one that they started to use and they love it. That's shadow IT. You don't know they're doing it, you don't know where your data's gone, and you don't really have any visibility on that. And the worst thing is that if they leave, you probably can't lock them out of that system or get the data out of it because you didn't set up in the first place. So by creating products that are specifically designed to address needs, you are reducing the ability for people to go out and find products themselves. Enable improvements that have resulted in greater sustainability. So we know that actually by leveraging things like Power Apps and putting it in one ecosystem, you're not only getting far more value from the licenses you're paying for, but you're improving that user experience. Again, decreased downtime and process outages. So Microsoft isn't without fault. They have had the occasional outage over the years, but they're pretty good. We know that if an issue impacts one of us, it's likely to impact millions of people worldwide. And so, whilst Microsoft do have a 99.999% guarantee, we all remember those times it doesn't work, but I can assure you that it's one of the most, if not the most, reliable cloud platforms that we see. And so by having those products in one ecosystem, fully leveraged, it's certainly going to do that. Focusing on unlocking value and not just savings. So when we talk about the traditional workplace, when we talk to people about looking to move away from physical infrastructure, physical servers, and moving to things like the cloud through things like Microsoft 365, typically speaking, if you have a server and it's time to talk about replacing that, and the use case is there. So one of the main reasons that stops people from being able to get rid of a server is a traditional application that needs to be stuck on a server that people need to access. But if you can tick all the boxes to move to the modern workplace, then actually typically we see that initial journey to take you from kind of having that traditional infrastructure to moving to the cloud is around half the price of replacing that existing technology. The huge advantage though is that you no longer have a server that needs to be maintained, supported. You don't need to worry about extending the warranty. You don't need to worry about what happens if you lose power in the building or you lose internet or something happens. Yes, particularly the modern workplace, it can be cheaper, but actually it's far more about actually leveraging those tools from it. So the question to be asking yourself isn't whether you should have a modern workplace solution, it's how far along the journey you are and how fast you can accelerate. So we've been talking to people and helping people put their email accounts called Exchange into Microsoft 365 for probably over 10 years now, because effectively it was cheaper and more cost effective to have your email account sat within the Microsoft Online 365 environment than it was to try and have a server that did that. So it's very difficult to imagine any organization that hasn't started that modern workplace journey. And those journeys look different for every organization. That there will be reasons why certain parts of the modern workplace can't be adopted. We have our core technologies and we talk about them in sort of stages, but there's absolutely no reason why. If you have a more traditional environment for a certain number of reasons, manufacturing is quite often an area where it drives that more traditional requirement. There's absolutely no reason why you can't at the same time look at the process automation element, because it's built into Teams, which virtually every Microsoft license has included. So that's really the headline from this process, from this webinar. It's we're all on a journey. The journey is going to look different for every organization that we talk to, and you can do bits and pieces, and you can do it in your own order. But we're all on that journey. So here's an interesting graph. This isn't specifically around the Microsoft Modern Workplace, but more just around technologies in general. So what are the main barriers to adoption of new technology? Cost of solutions. Well, with Microsoft Modern Workplace, that kind of doesn't really apply here. When we talk to organizations about adopting the Microsoft Modern Workplace, in most cases, probably 9 out of 10, those organizations already have the licenses, already paying that monthly cost for those licenses that they need to make it work. So really the only cost is working with people like us that can help them hone that solution and build that solution into something that is right for their business. And we've already talked about the fact that in many cases, that's around half the cost of replacing the existing solution. Uncertainty over business impact. Again, you're moving to a globally recognized solution with Microsoft. Many businesses are already using that. So you could argue that really business impact is kind of on its head here. It's the other way around. If you have an existing technology, which again relies on an internet connection, power, that building, something could happen to that building. Any number of things could happen. Compare that with Microsoft ecosystem, which has a couple of data centers in the UK, it has multiple data centers around the world, unlimited amounts of resources to make that system work. So that's not really a thing here. Difficulty researching. Well, I can tell you how difficult it's been to transform ourselves as an organization from being people that kind of replace servers with slightly newer servers, and the difference between those processes is about 5 years and not a lot new to learn, compared with becoming experts in things like SharePoint and process automation and device management. It's huge. You don't have to worry about any of that stuff. We're the highest level of modern workplace partner that you can get, and there are other organizations out there that can help. So you don't need to worry about researching things. We're more than happy to help you look at any challenges you face, any opportunities that you want to look at. It's our skill, it's our job really to look at those licenses and say, okay, actually, here's a use case for this particular product. When we get into the future webinars and we go into those 4 key technologies, the guys will be going into much more detail around what those solutions look like, and you can actually see some practical examples of it. Technical concerns, again, I don't think that's necessarily such a big thing here. Difficult comparing solutions. Here's a really interesting one that I bring up every now and again. But if you take the most popular modern workplace license that there is, it's something called Business Premium from Microsoft. It's about £16 at the moment, £16.60. That includes everything from an email account to Teams to OneDrive to SharePoint to installs of Office. It gives you an antivirus license. It gives you spam filtering. It gives you lots of clever things. If you compare that to Dropbox, so Dropbox for Business, if you wanted to pay for that on a monthly basis, and all that really does is handle data, that product is £19.90. So from a cost perspective, it's difficult to argue against the Microsoft ecosystem, and it's very difficult to find a product set that comes anywhere close to what you can do with Microsoft. Resistance to change is probably the biggest challenge here. We are changing things. You know, the modern workplace journey is about kind of turning things on its head and working differently, and there's no getting away from that. And so one of the most important parts of any modern workplace journey, even if we've been looking after you for 10 years and we know you we know you guys inside and out, and you know us, there will always be a process to any journey to understand not just the machines you use or the applications you use, but actually how it is that your team work. And so through that process of we call it discovery and innovation, by going through that process, by providing proof of concept, so by building out something that you guys can test, and then through the process of training, we really do get to the point where by the time the solution goes live, any of that stuff is dealt with, but there is no getting away from it. Probably the biggest barrier to the modern workplace is that change, and you have to have people that want to embrace the journey. But again, it's not to say that the journey has to be all in one thing. Not everything has to be done at once. You can do departments by departments. You can do technology by technology. It's never changing. So just to recap, a modern workplace solution that can bring value, reduce the cost of risk, automate key IT processes, and increase employee productivity. So we know it can increase the flow of work by seamlessly connecting users. It's familiar, it's easy to use applications with Microsoft technology, time efficient ways to deploy devices and access approved applications. So again, we're talking about automating the device setup. We're talking about one set of applications that people are familiar with. Increase IT efficiency and built-in security. So again, on the device side of things, we're talking about how we can reduce the setup of new equipment from a couple of days to a couple of hours by automation. We can save time and protect your reputation, again, by having all your data in one place. We have one conversation about one set of security requirements that are designed specifically around you. That's a massive tick box. We can mitigate compliance and privacy risks, again, with the Microsoft ecosystem. As soon as you're filling out any kind of questionnaire, you're needing to justify where your data is and how it's being looked after. The Microsoft platform is second to none. Added business value by maximizing IT solutions. This is probably one of the biggest ones. Almost every organization we talk to is paying for licenses that they're just not getting the most amount of value out of. And that's our job as Microsoft partners to help you understand what those products are capable of and if they apply to you. Smooth, protected user experience. This is all about streamlining the process for how people get data, where and how they can access that data, and when they need a new device, or managing people leaving or starting, that entire process is absolutely slick as it could be. So over to you. Any questions?
We've got one in, Matt, and they're asking, are there any risks to storing sensitive data, e.g. payroll, on SharePoint?
I would say, I mean, providing the SharePoint environment is like any environment really. Most of the risk comes around how it's set up and how it's managed. So I would say no. In a properly configured environment, I guess if you think about it, in any environment, it's about putting data in a location. So that location either is on a server, which is in a building that you manage, or it's in somewhere like the Microsoft ecosystem, which is in multiple data centers. So I don't think there is. And actually, it's no different really than a number of organizations using, I mean, BrightPay, we use Xero as an accounts package. We use BrightPay as a payroll package. These are cloud-based products. So I think providing the environment, just as any environment, is properly configured, I don't think there is.
I thought another question was coming in, but there wasn't at all. And we're bang on the nose, just under 60 minutes as promised. Woo, woo. Anybody have any questions, please put them in chat, and if it falls outside of the webinar, then I'll get Matt to come back to you individually. Oh, two people are writing at once.
I can see that one, Caroline.
Can you?
Yeah, I can see the person that's posted that one as well. Yeah, absolutely. I think we've got a chat scheduled. So we'll absolutely happily pick that one up. I mean, what I would say, everyone, is that this is the very first one of our webinars. I can't tell you how long it's taken to prep for something that was under an hour. But the future webinars are going to really deep dive into some of these technologies we've been talking about, to show you some examples, to show you some use cases. I can see that question as well. Personally, no, I've not heard of that. Oh.
Okay, Matt's saying being able to see a lot more than I am.
Yeah.
Brilliant, thanks a lot. Well, end of the webinar. Just want to let you know that you will be getting an email with a copy of the slides and a copy of the recording for you to take home and do with what you want. Our next webinar we're looking to do is the use of data and collaboration in a modern workplace solution. If you would like your own personal pre-invite, then do email the email address on screen, or let Matt know, and I'll send it out to you directly when it's all up and running. And thank you very much for attending today, and I hope you found today useful.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.